God sees and God sets free. Tell your neighbor, God sees and God sets free. I need about 4 minutes to talk to you about this. Because one of the biggest lies the devil tells people is God doesn't care. If God really cared, God wouldn't have let it happen. Now, you mean tell me there's a God and he let you go through what you went through? You mean to tell me that there's a God and you suffered through what you had to suffer through? You mean to tell me that there's a God who loves you and you went through all of this? Where was your God when you were being hurt? Where was your God when you were being mistreated? Where was your God? Somebody help me in this house. Anybody heard folk talk about where was your God then? It's important to understand that God does allow suffering in a fallen world. And suffering is not God's fault. Suffering is not God's fault. God is not the author of suffering unless you're under his wrath. God is not the author of suffering. He allows suffering. I don't know why God allows things that he hates. I like to stand on this platform and tell you I know exactly why it happened. I know exactly why God let it happen. As long as he let it happen, I'd like to be able to tell you that there is a rational reason for it, but I am not God. And there's some things that God doesn't let you in on because he's God and he doesn't have to. But what I can tell you is that God saw and God cared and God is a deliverer. Yeah, the Bible says. The Bible says in verse 7, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. God says, I want you to know that just like a meteorologist watches over the weather with careful eyes, he says, I want you to know that I saw everything going on. I was watching with careful eyes. I was seeing it just for what it was. He says, I want them to know that I heard their cry. Don't ever let people make you think that God doesn't hear you when you cry out to him. My God, somebody in this house knows that God heard you when you cried late in the midnight hour. He didn't come when you wanted him to come, but somebody can bear witness that God showed up just in time. Yeah, just when you didn't think you could take any more, just when you thought you were going to die, just when you thought you were going to be there for the rest of your life, the God that you cried out to said, no, baby, I see this right here, and guess what? I'm coming down myself. God said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step into this. I got this. God says, let them know that I see. Let them know that I'm concerned. Let them know that I care. He says, over in verse 16, he says, I've watched over you and have seen what has been done to you in Egypt. God says, let them know that I saw them.